Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 12. In today's video, I'm going to kind of do a two-part thing. I'm going to share with you guys my update for life after teaching. I quit teaching in 2021, and so I'm going to share with you guys what I've been doing lately, my thoughts on education now that I've been out for a couple of years, and then I wanted to react to the best schools in the world, which was a BBC I don't know if you would call it a documentary, but it was sort of like this chronicle of what the best schools in the world are doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and comment and give my 2 cents that nobody asked for. As a former teacher, as someone who has worked in both elementary, middle, and high schools in California, in the United States, as someone who has been in the education system for such a long time, I thought, why not? I'll react to it and tell you guys what I think. So if you want to watch my I Quit Teaching video, I will leave it in the pinned comment sections below so you guys can watch that video. It's not my most popular video, surprisingly, but it does chronicle sort of more in detail why I decided that I needed to take a break at the very least. I quit teaching in 2021 right after it was actually in the midst of the pandemic. Like we were kind of coming out of it. In California, we had very strict rules around going to school and athletics and masks and, the number of students who could be in a classroom and all of that. So it was quite a different experience in California than I imagine if you were in like Florida or Texas, because we had exceptionally strong boundaries and rules around what you could and could not do in the classroom, outside of the classroom, etc. But I will tell you that my desire to leave teaching started far beyond, my last year of teaching and even teaching through the pandemic. In fact, I would even argue that teaching through the pandemic, while difficult, was probably the better years of my career. And a lot of that, I've made a video about this before, was my ability to detach, which is something that a lot of teachers refuse to do. They refuse to detach from their profession. And, one of the teachers that I worked with, probably towards the end of my career, probably around my 10th year, she said, we're the only industry that if you quit mid whatever, fiscal year, mid-year, where you are expected, to finish the job. No one, people will demonize you and, malign and berate you and really question your ethics and morals if you quit in the middle of the school year. But if you quit any other job, no one cares. And I imagine, of course, it's because you have souls on the line, right? There are kids who need to be educated. You chose a job that requires a full year of teaching, before you terminate. So yes, it makes some sense, but the theory, the concept remains the same, which is that there are expectations placed on teachers that are not really placed in any other profession, including the proverbial giving up of your soul in order for students to pass, which is just outrageous. There's so many teachers coming out now who are saying the same thing, which is that it's impossible to teach if parents are not parenting. And I still work with people, right? I still work with students. I coach athletes privately. So I'm in high interactions with students. And to this day, I will tell you, I've never changed my mind on this. Students who are parented well achieve more and they're more respectful. And I hate to say parented well, but that's the fact. The fact of the matter is, if you have trained your child that you are in school to learn and not to make friends, fight, be cool, whatever, your child understands that concept and listens. If your child is trained to be respectful to you, they will be respectful to teachers. I said this in my I Quit Teaching video, which was that towards the end of my career, I had to start saying, I'm not your mother. Because I know you guys talk crazy to your mom. I know you guys talk to your mother like you have no sense, like you have lost parts of your brain. And I know your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, but you are missing essential parts of your brain if you think you're going to talk to me the way that you talk to your mother. And funny enough, they actually respected me. You're not going to talk. I know you talk crazy to that lady. You're not going to do that with me. And it's just too much work. It's just too much work. I think that if you're going to be in the teaching profession in the United States, and maybe even particularly in California, and even like more so if you are in lower socioeconomic areas where there's public schools, because there's more on that later, that you're going to see that. You're going to see that it requires a lot of emotional support that teachers do not have the capacity to give long term. I told you guys in my I Quit Teaching video that my first year of teaching, I was sick every single weekend. And I think it was purely from the stress of being a teacher and not really having the tools to be able to manage my stress. So in retrospect, like, I think that if people are going to teach, and they're going to teach in areas where, behavior is not something that is taught at home, you have to be able to protect your mental health in like a genuine, real way. I don't think anybody who's never been a teacher, I think it's hard for them to understand. But you are told as a teacher that if a child is misbehaving, it's because you're not doing something right, which is the most gaslightiest thing I've ever heard in my life. It's like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, and I used to say this too. I used to say, like, well, if a seed's not growing, do you blame the seed, or do you figure out ways to like give it, what is it called? Fertilizer or water, right? It's stupid. I would like never say that to a teacher again. But then one of my professors says, yeah, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And sometimes you can give a horse a bunch of salt and they still won't drink water because they just simply don't want to drink water. And that is a more accurate representation of what's happening in schools. So, life after teaching. So I actually quit teaching mid-semester. In the middle of the school year. So I quit at the end of the semester. I had my private coaching lined up. I was getting offered larger sums to coach teams. And so I was like, if I don't do this now, I have to go. This is the opportunity. I have to make this business work, because I had seen in the past where I have skipped opportunities because I was scared. And then like they blew up later on, which is exactly what happened to me. So I quit teaching. My first couple of months were very, very rough and sparse. Like, I told this story on my Instagram, how I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to have to put my rent on a credit card one month. But, because I just wasn't getting the traction that I thought I was going to. And I hustled. I mean, I was sharing my card with everybody. I was opening up my schedule for any time of the day. I was training at all hours. Eventually it came to fruition, but those first couple of months were really, really rough. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to put I'm going to have to put my rent on a credit card, and I'm going to have to go back to subbing to make some money. But I ended up getting a couple of large contracts with some teams. And from there, it just sort of like spiraled out of control, massive, massive amounts of clients, until I moved out of the area after I got married. So life in that sense has been very, very successful. Do I recommend that people do that? Not necessarily. Like, I think you have to have a certain kind of grit and a certain kind of resilience that, quite frankly, a lot of people do not have if you're going to start your own business. Did I make the video yet? But it's like, basically, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, like, the level of faith that you have to be an entrepreneur is higher than in any other profession, because there are days where you're simply not going to think that you're going to make it. You are going to fail so many times, and you just have to be willing to get back up again. And so, life after teaching has been fine. What I like is that I'm still able to like teach in a different way, but it doesn't involve me, being in a classroom, being hamstrung by policies, being hamstrung by, whatever curriculum or policies and procedures that have been handed down by the state or by federal government. One thing that is like shocking to me is, now that I'm out of the profession for a couple of years, I have been asking my athletes, like, okay, like, I asked them, like, what are you guys reading? And we'll say, oh yeah, that was a good book. I taught that. We use that book for whatever, narrative, or we use that book for, compare and contrast, or claim evidence reasoning, or character building, whatever. And what's shocking to me, like, you guys, is just the sheer amount of people who are so disconnected from teaching. And how, when I went into the teaching profession, I was so, violently obsessed with being a good teacher and doing everything I could and making sure everybody succeeded. And I am continuously amazed at how disconnected their teachers are. And and okay, some of them are bad. Like I hear it, I'm like, okay, some of these teachers are not great teachers. But that's literally how you survive in the profession. Is that in retrospect, I've thought like, wow, if I wanted to survive in this profession, I would have had to not be obsessed with being the best teacher and not being obsessed with being having every single one of my students succeed, despite statistically that not being possible. Statistically speaking, you're not going to get every single student up to grade level. You're not. It's just impossible. But when you go into when you start your teaching credential and you go into these programs, everybody's pie in the sky ideology about how you're going to change the world. And we're all watching Stand and Deliver and Freedom Writers and all these videos that no one tells you, hey, these people only taught for 1 year because it's unsustainable. It is. It's unsustainable. I also have a video called Teaching Ruined My Health. And some of that was my fault. And some of that is just the nature of the job, where if you do not have strong boundaries, your health will inevitably suffer. And I have this conversation with my clients a lot about how your job is actually not more important than your health. People will stay up until midnight, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, quote unquote, working for their company, only to have high blood pressure, diabetes, pot bellies because they can't lose the weight, because they're stressed out, because they're eating, and it's like, really? Like, is this what we're doing? And if you look at teachers, they are probably one of the most unhealthy populations in the world. We are so unhealthy. And it's because of this reason. We put health above everything. As if the fact that if you're not healthy, by the way, you cannot work. Eventually it catches up to you. And that's what happened when I was a teacher. Eventually it caught up to me. Eventually it was unsustainable for me. So one of the things that has changed dramatically is my health. Like, I remember like 2 months after I quit teaching, I was walking out of the gym at my apartment complex and the front desk lady goes, "You're glowing. What happened?" And I was like, "Oh, I quit teaching." She was like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I quit teaching." Immediate stress relief. Immediately, just no dread of going to work. No, like, just now, mind you, I was stressed about whether or not my rent was going to get paid, because remember, I had just quit teaching, but I wasn't stressed about, the things that you're stressed about as a teacher. And I wasn't like, oh my gosh, what foolishness are they going to come up with today? What drama is going to happen in the athletic department today that's going to, be an issue? Like, what stress is going to bombard me today? It's all stuff that you can handle when you're an entrepreneur. And the people that I notice that are really successful after teaching, they don't take these weird obsessive habits, such as, I want to be the best person and I want to do all the things and say yes to all the tasks, which is what I did when I was a teacher. They don't take these to their other careers. So the teachers who go into project management or into sales, and the ones who are successful and happy, they have really strong boundaries. So they're done at 5 o'clock. They go on vacations. They do not answer their phones unless they need to. They're not, they've learned these strong boundaries that really teachers should have as well. I think the younger generation might be a little better at this than we are. Like the Gen Zers or Gen Xers might be better at this than we are. But if there's one thing that I tell teachers now, it's like, you should just make sure you have boundaries, because you will literally, I saw a post the other day, you guys, that said, coaches lose sleep over other people's children, and teachers lose sleep and their health over other people's children. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And especially not worth it if the parents don't care.